Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hash Rate. My name is Mark Jeffrey. My guest today is Jin of Eliza Labs. Hello, Jin. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Thanks for being with us. And as everyone can see, Jin is not doxxed, so we are now speaking with Jin's avatar. So, okay. So let's talk about Eliza. So I want to kind of start with the basics. I'm a lot of people who know me know that I'm big into Tau or BitTensor. And I've been paying a lot of attention to that universe as sort of the, arguably the primary crypto meets AI thing out there. And then we saw the rise of Terminal of Truths and sort of Mark Andreessen paying attention to that. And then out of nowhere, we saw AI 16Z, the coin and the phenomenon and the associated ElizaOS project kind of rise up. And when I first saw it, I didn't understand what it was. I was like, why is this coin blowing up? And I had a number of people point me to the GitHub ElizaOS repo as being the number one repo in the world. I don't think it is right now, but it was for a while. So why don't you tell us about what is ElizaOS and how long you guys been working on it, and just give us kind of a quick intro.
Sure. So Eliza, I guess to go even further back, it was this computer program in the 60s, in which it was kind of like based on a psychotherapist, I believe. And It was all about, it's actually kind of interesting how the character profile has been like the most popular, even up until now with character AI. Like, I think their number one character personality, Google just acquired character AI, is like a therapist. But yeah, it's a homage to that program. So Eliza is an AI framework. You can plug in any model, including your own models. And it's extensible. There's a ton of plugins, over 100. And Shaw's been working on it for years.
Shaw is the founder, right?
Yeah, he's founder, lead dev, and he's just been grinding on this, building a lot of different AI frameworks over the years and different programming languages, finally settled on TypeScript. And just, in terms of how it kind of came about, and it goes back to, he heard of DAOs.
When you said Shaw was working on this for years, does this predate the rise of the LLMs and the whole ChatGPT eruption that happened like a year and a half ago?
He was working on this, I believe, in 2022.
Wow. Okay. So yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I also been using like GPT before ChatGPT emerged, and I think it really speaks to the power of interfaces about how like we sort of measure milestones. Like, nobody really knew about GPT models until ChatGPT emerged onto the scene. And Eliza is this framework that can bring LLMs to a whole bunch of different clients, such as Discord, Telegram, Twitter, Farcaster, and there's just a ever-growing list.
And Roblox even too. I think I read on a list as well.
Yeah, there's multiple different game integrations happening right now, and Roblox is one of them, Hyperfy, Nifty Island, a couple others. You
guys, or Shaw at least, started working on this in 2022 at least, and so predating the ChatGPT popularization, I guess GPTs were out there before then. I wasn't aware of GPTs before ChatGPT, and I think most of the world didn't quite realize how shockingly good AI had become. It was so good it could pass the Turing test. I don't think any of us really got that until the interface of ChatGPT popped out, and we're like, oh my God, this thing, it actually does pass the Turing test. Is it conscious? No, I don't think anybody believes that. But for sure, it passes the Turing test. So, okay. So when you say, so the repo, so basically because Eliza is open source and it has this plugin architecture, this enables third parties to create interfaces or integrations with Eliza that I guess are not possible with ChatGPT and other things. What is it that makes Eliza? Why do you think it took off like it did? And what makes the ability to create integrations so much better than, what ChatGPT offers or any other offering offers?
I think it's like an LLM on legs in a way. It was, basically it kind of brought it to the places where we all hang out, like Discord and Twitter.
Yeah.
And so it got a lot of visibility through X as well. And I think that really contributed to it, along with just tokens adding rocket fuel to really capture mindshare. And I think this is something that really differentiates it from other AI frameworks, is just how much different blockchain integrations there are with Eliza. And it's kind of the most active area of like community contributions is like all these different plugins to plug into different either blockchains or doing different types of analysis or just useful things. And it just kind of adds a new UI element in which you can just use natural language to do things like inspect contract addresses or market analysis or complex transactions. You can kind of just talk naturally. It is still early days. And I think that we're only scratching the surface because most people are only using maybe one or two plugins at a time, but like their effects can compound when you combine them. So there's just, I once, just recently, to give people ideas for hackathons, I fed Claude a bunch of different documents about each plugin that we have and asked it for some new ideas using combinations of them. And yeah, just to me, I was like, wow, there's so much to be built still. And just how these different Lego pieces can start to build on top of each other. We've barely begun that.
Yeah, so when you say that there's integrations with other blockchains, and looking at what a lot of these agentic AI things are doing, sort of the base level of it is it's integrated with X, it's integrated with Discord, and it's a chatbot, right? That's sort of the most basic version of it. And you can create these agents in a no-code fashion simply by describing the personality of the agent, things it knows about, things it focuses on. And the chatbot will then, you can say like, act like Tony Soprano, right? Address people like Tony Soprano, use that voice and pay attention to these things and be an expert in these things. And it will just figure out what it needs to do in order to talk like Tony Soprano and to know about those things on its own. You don't have to like program it in. So that's sort of the base layer. But then when you tell it to do things, if it has an integration with a blockchain and access to a wallet, it can actually decide to make bets on particular coins based on a particular strategy and based on things it's hearing on X or whatever. And it can now actually actively trade coins and manage your portfolio. And I've seen people doing this, WA Combinator is one, Sequoia, SAKOI is another, right, where these are supposedly crypto hedge funds who are mostly managing portfolios of other agentic AI coins, right? So it's sort of like a agentic AI meme coin hedge fund manager.
Yeah.
But what else is sort of, so I've seen that, and there's some argument about whether actual humans are actually working the wallets under the hood versus the actual AIs. And there is debate about that from what I've seen. But I believe it's possible for agentic AI.
That's going to end soon. There's a lot of stuff for verifiable inference. So just basically kind of proving that.
Okay. So you can prove that. It's not like, okay. Hash Rate is sponsored by Ledger. With the announcement of Ledger Flex and Ledger Stacks, Ledger gives you the best security on the planet for your crypto and identity. Ledger Flex and Stacks drive an e-ink screen with the same secure chip that's in your credit card and passport. Except, instead of protecting the secrets of banks and governments, Ledger protects your secrets and your private keys. Ledger supports Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and more than 200 other tokens. The secure touchscreen, plus the Ledger Live app, means that whether you're buying your very first Bitcoin or doing your 2000th swap, you can do it securely and easily with your Ledger. And as always, use my link, shop.ledger.com/hashrate in the show notes to get the very best price whenever you buy a Ledger Flex or Stacks. But beyond sort of those things, what are things you can do with agentic AI? Like what is it? Is that the limit of it, or are there a whole bunch of other things that we're just scratching the surface and what are those other things?
So like AI 16Z started with like Shaw and a founder of DAOs Have Fun meeting and just kind of discussing ideas like, this vision of the future in which AIs are just trading 24/7 for us. And if we only had like the A16Z of AI agents kind of like doing that, and, it was like AI 16Z came about, and that is like one really fun concept, and it's yet to be proven how profitable that could be. But what's kind of emerged from this mandate of being an AI-led DAO that's kind of managing our treasury is we're also like eating our own dog food about how we can use AI agents to do and automate other functions of the DAO itself and across the open source project. Because now we just have like this huge tent of open source hackers and AI researchers and crypto, degens, and everyone just kind of like together, kind of aligned and sharing knowledge with one another. And so, there's a lot of opportunity and activity around how we can use AI agents to build AI agents. So we're using it for summarization, for reviewing pull requests on the GitHub, and for documentation. And just marketing is one other aspect. So in terms of like comms and keeping people in the loop, it's still a work in progress, but we've got like a news aggregator that summarizes all the GitHub updates, all the X and Discord announcements from different accounts, and just kind of aggregating it all together to kind of help build a writer's room to streamline how we can keep everyone kind of updated. Because this ecosystem, I'm reminded of this one comic in which it's XKCD 1810 about chat systems, and everyone's kind of like in a different bubble. And, like whenever you're context switching between different channels or different tabs, it's just a lot to keep track of. And I think AI agents can really help us in terms of kind of being that glue person in between these different information silos and group chats. And I think, I see that problem as well. In any kind of large organization, you have a bunch of different work groups, for example, that might not know what each other is working on, even though they're kind of like in the same umbrella forum or org, or, as an ecosystem gets bigger, it's just more things to keep track of. Mm-hmm. And so I think AI agents can really help to solve a lot of information routing and coordination challenges, especially when you're working remotely or online.
Yeah, that explains. I mean, one of my questions, I'd heard Shaw say that agents help DAOs run more efficiently. And I didn't really understand that until just now. And I was like, well, so how exactly? And your answer is it can summarize what's going on and synthesize and boil it down from multiple sources into sort of, a couple sentences. Here's what's going on across Discord, and new things that have dropped in the documentation, and help human brains understand a wide swath of real-time information a lot faster. Which is right. So, okay. So that makes total sense.
It was actually part of Vitalik's original essay when he defined DAOs in 2014. He has a part in there about autonomous agents. So things are circling back. And, like summarization is definitely one part of it. Like in terms of like this interview, for example, imagine how much work it'd take for someone to manually try and summarize the key points, whereas it's like one API call and like a few cents to do it. And so that's really scalable, and you can help to kind of coordinate and just keep up to date with a whole bunch of things in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, so you're familiar with Masari, probably the crypto research firm. So I have access to Masari Enterprise, and Masari Enterprise, for each podcast that it puts in the news section, it does that exact summarization. So this podcast will be summarized by the Masari AI when it's listed in their interface. And it does a great job, right? Because if it's your podcast, I was there. I created the show notes for it. And so when I go and I look at what Masari's AI has synthesized, I'm like, this is great. This is exactly right. It does a fantastic job. So, yeah.
I think podcasters are sitting on a treasure trove of a bunch of data. A lot of it's in video format or audio. And once you kind of convert it to text, you get a whole bunch of new unlocks. And there's like this character in a couple of books and movies, the librarian from Snow Crash or the curator from Ready Player One, in which, you can kind of ask them anything and they just know, they got this kind of index in their mind and can point you to wherever. And that's kind of what, I kind of think of when it comes to like these agents helping us in orgs. They can just point you to whatever you're kind of looking for better than like Google.
Yes. Interesting. So basically everything you've described, and I love everything you've described, but I'm going to like sort of do the other side of it. It's still largely chatbot stuff, right? Now it's got like the training data may be varied, but largely it's a thing you talk to and it just speaks back to you. It's not actually actively doing stuff other than responding to questions, right? So we've talked about managing a wallet and a hedge fund and that sort of thing with crypto. Is there anything else that people are talking about agents doing at this time actively, or is that kind of it so far?
They are working like autonomous in a way of like they're on this loop in which, for example, the way Truth Terminal and a lot of this scene came about is via these infinite backrooms where agents are kind of talking to other agents. And we have one in the Discord, for example, where people invite their agents, and as they also talk amongst each other, they're also updating their memory and database. And it's just kind of like a really fast information transfer between them. And some memes have kind of like came about. I think Goat and was one of them infamously, in which the AIs kind of came up with it. But
the AIs came up with it because they're talking to one another.
Yes.
And they're sort of jamming together, right? It's like a jam session between AIs.
Yeah, exactly. And if you can imagine, like if you train this is where like there's some interest around, for example, the peeps from Ethereum and Gitcoin are really interested in building AI agents modeled after some like top contributors of the ecosystem and having them kind of simulate a backrooms amongst each other to discuss maybe different Ethereum improvement proposals or protocols or discussions about public goods funding. You can kind of just like hyperspeed these kind of group chat settings in which, I think it could turn into some interesting results when you simulate those while looking for maybe potential new ideas or alignment strategies or things like that.
That is pretty interesting. So these agents right now, let's talk about where they're hosted. I hear a lot of people say, well, agents are on a blockchain. They're not really on a blockchain. They're really in an AWS cluster or they're hosted somewhere generally centrally, I believe. Is that correct? And if they're hosted centrally, how are they controlled and how can we trust them?
Yeah, they can be hosted wherever. This what also like makes me really interested and passionate about Eliza is just how the open source nature of it is where you can self-host it on your own machine and you can run whatever model you want. I'm a big believer in, I built a full tower desktop just for running Olama, like my own models at home. And I think there's a bright future as well for personal AI because their usefulness gets more so when you can trust it enough with private or personal information. And to send that to the cloud just feels wrong. It's like, and technology is on this curve in which we are getting much more capability to run bigger models at home. If you saw NVIDIA digits, for example, two of those connected together, it's like $6,000 and can run like the biggest Llama models, which is 400 something billion parameters. So it's like we're getting supercomputer type systems that we can run at home for. I didn't think it would take I thought it would take much longer than it did. They're announcing this May they're going to start selling those units. And you don't always need like the biggest unit or the biggest model to do everything. Different models are skilled at different things. But in general, the flexibility to run a model where you want it, whether you want it on the cloud or you want to run it locally, not even connected online, I think is, just one of the most important parts of this, for open source AI especially.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy, right? Like, I think DeepSeek in particular shocked the world because not only was it, theoretically trained on much less powerful GPUs, and there is debate about that, but let's just assume that there's some truth to it. But it also runs on very low-powered GPUs comparatively, from what I understand, so much so that you can actually run DeepSeek on an Android phone, which is like completely locally, not connected to the internet, and it's just this Turing test passing AI. It's crazy that there's a Turing test passing AI that can run on an Android phone. That is just mind blowing that that's even a thing, right? I mean, did I get that correct? And what is your thought? What are your thoughts on DeepSeek in general?
I think for the first part, I'd have to check later, but I did see a bunch of like people even getting DeepSeek running on like a Raspberry Pi, and there was like a guide out there. I don't think it's the full R1 model, but there's like different distillations of it. And just in general, though, it's very bullish for open source AI. And I think it was the thing that Western AI efforts really needed to kind of whip them into, taking open source more seriously, because for a while it's been like, and it is still bullish for a bit more compute, because if we did find out, because they did release the white paper, and now it's like we have all this compute, like we could probably use some of these techniques to create even more powerful AI. But, it just kind of really helped to, people called it a Sputnik moment. And I really like that metaphor because, just closed AI. It's just ironic that a hedge fund released this open source model, whereas OpenAI has been closed.
That is the ultimate irony. From China, a hedge fund from China released the most open AI, right? Like, who would have? Like, in what universe did anybody see that coming? And then then the American big AI company, acts like North Korea, right? And
it was surreal because it's like I'm in this community where we're like building this AI hedge fund, and maybe there is something to just like having people who are really into finance, who are thinking about things. And Shaw also comes from a game dev background, especially working on web. And so he's also really concerned about optimizations and making things very performant because you're very resource constrained in the browser.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's just some interesting parallels in terms of backgrounds.
Yeah, one of the things they did with DeepSeek, and I'm getting this from David Sachs's analysis of DeepSeek on the latest All In podcast. David Sachs is now the United States crypto and AI czar. And when DeepSeek happened, he immediately spoke with everyone in the United States who is a leader in AI to sort of get their take on how DeepSeek had what was it and how was it constructed. And one of the things that he said on the show was that they learned to do more, quite a bit more with quite a bit less, and specifically the chips, right, which we touched on. But the other thing that they did was they constrained the training data for each AI. So DeepSeek is in many ways a lot of little AIs that are trained on a specific domain of data. It doesn't have to be an expert on everything. It's like I'm an expert on this vertical. And the littler AIs would then coordinate with one another to produce an ultimate answer. But this sort of breaking it up into sub tranches or sub AIs was one of the techniques, which struck me as very similar to AI agents and the description of swarms of AI agents, where the AI agents would be, each vertical experts in something, and they would then talk to one another to arrive at the best answer, perhaps even paying one another in crypto for their services ultimately. Right? So sort of this bizarre vision versus the Cathedral, like sort of the one monster AI that knows everything.
Yeah.
What
One
do
of
you
my
think
favorite essays.
Yeah, the Cathedral, you understand what I'm talking about, the Cathedral versus the Bazaar. It feels to me like that's playing out here again, but with AI agents representing the Bazaar. Do you think the future of AI is a Bazaar like, millions of agents coordinating and paying one another?
Yes, I do see that. And I see a lot of potential with AI agents paying other AI agents. And I believe also what you're describing, it reminds me of mixture of experts. And I could see that kind of like scaling into as well as like these agents coordinating with one another. And we're starting to experiment with that for trading, where some people have made a really good agent that's just good at analyzing. And right now we have some of our AI agents like trading meme coins. But they might like buy something and get farmed or rugged. And, people use bots all the time in Telegram or Discord to do some due diligence on projects, like check the bubble maps or see, if the dev sold or, just all this other type of analysis to influence how much conviction they have in making a trade. So some AI agents are really optimized for doing like that analysis role, and others are really good at maybe doing certain strategies. And the Cathedral and the Bazaar is very prescient, I think, today, because you have like these huge labs who are getting funded to make these models. And then here comes like DeepSeek, in which it kind of came from, it just kind of like was a curveball, in which it didn't take that much money allegedly to train. And now everyone can run it. The paper is open source. The models are MIT licensed weights and everything. And the performance was like, top 10 overall, but, like top 3 for a number of different benchmarks. And I think also it took away the moat from people like thinking about how much of a moat that these big AI operations are for training the model, and flip the narrative back to those who are building wrappers. And for a while, tech industry has just really kind of like, there was no kind of lower status signal than building a GPT wrapper up until recently.
Yeah. Because
People
people
are,
ghetto.
yeah, people were shoving us in lockers and using that as a slur against us.
Yeah. Yep. And then now look who's laughing now, right?
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
when this whole DeepSeek thing happened, the first debate was like, is it real, right? And what came back was it's at least partially real. Like maybe the $6 million price tag is not real. Maybe that's kind of bullshit. Maybe they had some some NVIDIA chips in the closet somewhere that they snuck in that we didn't.
I think Hugging Face is trying to. I haven't checked recently, but they're trying to reproduce the trainings.
But everyone agrees that they published, it's an open source thing, so everybody can go look at it, and they published a white paper. Everyone agrees that they absolutely did create some new technical excellence that did not exist before, and that in the West we didn't suspect was possible. And the Chinese just figured it out, and they just kicked our ass, just straight up. There's no question about that. So and the other sort of, so my reaction immediately was, oh my God, this is the best thing that's ever happened for BitTensor, for you guys, for virtuals, for anybody working in the open source AI space. You don't have to be giant and centralized and enormous in order to be a leading player in AI anymore. That goes away. That evaporated overnight. So I think I'm in agreement with you fully. So yeah, huge.
That and it was a big win for synthetic data. Apparently we're hitting like the limits of how much data we have to like train these models on. And now there's a lot of, DeepSeek, for example, used synthetic data, and a lot of new models, especially like when it comes to 3D and robotics, they're using synthetic data. If you look at some of the stuff from Meta, for example, they have this research project called Habitat, in which it's humans and robotics, and just kind of like creating these simulation environments. It's all open source as well, but it's like they create these virtual environments to train robots in to do various things, and I think it works really well for indoor. And I think NVIDIA also has a whole page on this. For outdoors, Tesla, for example, has a good advantage with all the data that they're able to capture. And
when you're talking about Tesla, like and robots, you're talking about the cars, or are you talking about Optimus? I think you're talking about the cars. The self-driving cars.
Right. Yeah. No, they have a lot of robots. You're right. Yeah. The cars, but the robots, like by the time we have robots in our homes, I really don't want that thing connected to the cloud always. And I can't imagine how anyone would want to be in that future where, for a while, I guess we tolerated it because like the Alexa and Echo and all these other kind of AI connected cloud devices don't really have this kind of persona that's like, someone there like listening. But now with humanoid robots, I think that might flip a psychological switch where it's kind of like, oh, that's kind of spooky,
Yeah, there's like a being. It's like a 3PO, right? It's no longer just like an ear without a body. It's there. You can imagine it as a separate being physically in your home.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I think I'll be honest. The way I think about it. So I'm an investor in two humanoid robot companies, one of which I've spoken about publicly. The other one I haven't talked about yet, so I'm not going to reveal that one. But Figure AI is the one that I'm an investor in. And I'm also, I'm older, so my parents are even older, and they're seniors. And we're, my sister and I are providing senior care for one of my parents. It's a big deal. And one of the big use cases of these robots in the future, which they've called out in their marketing materials, is elder care. And once you sort of see it up close oh my God, it's incredibly useful. So, I don't have kids. So my plan is a robot is going to take care of me once I am of that age and need all that help as well. And I'll be very thankful for that help. I'll be honest, now that I've seen it up close. So,
Yeah.
which will require a cloud connection. But you're right; it's sort of scary that there's now basically a person in your home, and if somebody gets a hold of that person, what's to say that the robot's not going to choke me, right? Or right? I don't know. Like it could happen, right? So it is a fear. It's something we got to pay attention to anyway. Yeah, however unlikely maybe it is.
It's quite interesting how, me and Shaw both have AR and VR backgrounds, and some of these robots companies are like they have job listings where you basically have somebody in full body mocap and a VR headset kind of doing these activities to generate training data for them. And it's like this whole operation where they have like a whole floor of people in these data collection suits. Just maybe that's kind of our role in the future is we're all just producing training data.
Well, I think, I do want to, so let's talk about training synthetic data for a second, because for those who don't know what we're talking about, most of the LLMs that like ChatGPT, the training data that they use to create their intelligence is basically the entire data corpus of the internet. In other words, sentience exhaust from real humans that we've produced over the last 20, 30 years, whatever it is. Which is then inhaled by the AI and synthesized to create the intelligence. And basically what it's doing is it's using stats to predict the next word that it thinks would be the most likely word in an answer to a specific prompt. So it's basically micro plagiarizing at vast scale, and that's how the AI is created. Now we've run out of training data, right? Like there's not another internet of sentience exhaust that it could mine. We're sort of done once we've inhaled the entire internet. So where do we get more data from? Well, somehow you have AIs that create more data out of the sentience exhaust to add extra dimensions to it, maybe synthesizing and creating different rich summaries of the data that already exists to create more training data for more AIs to train on to get smarter. I've heard two points of view on that synthetic data. One is that because it's not produced by natural sentient humans, it's like a copy of a copy of a copy. And if a AI trains only on AI produced data, it eventually goes mad. And I've heard that point of view a couple times. I don't know whether it's true, and I haven't checked into this, so I don't know. And the other point of view is what I've heard from you is that actually, no, the synthetic data is actually getting quite good. And in fact, in some cases is better than the actual raw sentience exhaust. What do we know about synthetic data and the state of art of it today?
The state of art, there's this whole field moves so fast. So like I might get some things wrong.
Okay.
But I know that, because I was just recently reading a lot about Meta's latest AI stuff. They are celebrating some big milestone, I think 10 years of FAIR or something, and did some open source releases. And I was reading about how now, it kind of takes less, but also just really good quality synthetic data. Like when it comes to like building good AI, good data equals good AI. It is like the foundation of everything where you start. And there's this whole process where you capture data and then clean it and then enrich it and then in order to make it ready for training. But with synthetic data, I think it might be context specific for whether if it's better or worse. When it comes to like 3D stuff, I think that there's been a lot of positive breakthroughs, especially because you can safely as scalably test a whole bunch of different scenarios, as well as cost effectively for how maybe these things would interact in 3D environments, and that can transcend into the real world. believe NVIDIA is doing a lot with that as well. When it comes to automation, robotics for factories. And so, yeah, and one of the inspirations for the DAO that, this open source project that we're stewarding is the Tesla factory, is like a good North Star for a DAO. It's like you've got like automation. One of the things from Vitalik's blog post that my favorite line is automation at the center, humans at the edges. And recently he likened a new metaphor, updated it to, AI as the engine and humans as the steering wheel. And if we can just kind of like build systems that are able to just be very general purpose and even build like, print out their own factories, for example, then you've got a really new, powerful sort of like world computer type model for coordinating humans to build anything. And I think, when it comes to synthetic data, though, like just to bring it back, maybe that brings it back into the infinite backrooms discussions, because you've got AIs talking amongst each other. Maybe it's like trained on our meeting discussions, and they're kind of echoing those discussions amongst each other in a new chat room. And maybe that could lead to some interesting new ideas. So, just in the context of work groups and just coordinating stuff in our industry, it would be worth kind of creating some characters with knowledge of our activities or, stuff that we can then put them together, and they sometimes talk way faster than we're able to kind of read the chat in, which is kind of interesting to watch, but we can at least ask for summaries later.
Yeah. I love that phrase, infinite backrooms. That's a very interesting thought. So just endless Discord servers with endless numbers of AIs all speaking to one another and coordinating and jamming and coming up with things, and then turning around and giving us dumb, slow, meat space humans a summary of what happens in the infinite backrooms. And maybe it gets to a point where we can't even the summaries are too hard for us to follow.
Have you heard of The Idea Factory? It's this book about Bell Labs.
Yes. I'm aware of it. I've not read it, but I'm aware of it. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I think about that when it comes to like, if we're to kind of build something digitally, that would be one of my inspirations, kind of like a digital Bell Labs staffed with AI agents.
Yeah. And just getting while we're on the topic. So I didn't say this earlier, but so the inspiration for Eliza was the original 1960s Eliza, the psychologist, the psychoanalyst program, which was originally on mainframes. But when I was 10, I had a TRS-80, and we're talking like 1977, 78. And on that TRS-80, I had a copy of the Eliza program. So it was one of my first, sort of computer interactions was with Eliza, and it seemed to be alive, but it was very dumb. Of course, to my 10-year-old brain, it was still pretty well fooled into thinking it was, a sentient thing. And it would basically, you would say something and be like, "Tell me about your mother." And you'd be like, "Well, my mother likes to go shopping and do this and do that." And then it would take some part of your sentence and repeat it back to you and be like, "Tell me why your mother likes to go shopping," right? So not very clever, but clever enough to sort of ape being a human. And that was the state of the art at the time. And it wasn't bad in terms of creating that illusion. So when I saw that you had named your framework Eliza, I was like, I'm picking up what you're lying down there. And I was surprised that the Youngs knew about that, to be honest. So well done on your compu history. So
yeah, it's good lore. They call it the Eliza effect, and it's interesting. It's like it's 60. No, I don't know how many. It's 1960s, 40. It's like still like the number one profile since since then. And
Yeah,
I just
well
wonder
done.
how it's going to keep evolving, because if it's that good then, and now with AI as well, like at least we can have Elizas that are truly ours versus, a cloud AI sort of like godlike one having this kind of Eliza effect from top down. It kind of needed a counterbalance to that.
Yeah, super cool. So let's talk about the future now, and like where you guys are headed, and where's the project? What is the sort of the forward looking thinking, and what is high on your list, and where do you think the ElizaOS project is going next? What does the future look like?
The right now, the project is undergoing some architecture changes to be more. There's been a lot of plugins. Most of the contributions from people are plugins, and we're moving that into a registry so that the main project can be much more slimmer and just more organized, and then also like have a unified messaging system so that things that are happening, if it's talking on Discord or X or something, that it can also like kind of in a better logical system continue with that same context into other platforms and places and kind of pick up where it last left off in a way. So just some stuff that kind of reminds me a lot of like Linux development, because I'm a Linux person, and kind of reminds me of just like really kind of stripping things down to, okay, what's kernel development and what's like operating system, all the kind of nice to haves, but what's the essential core parts of it. And just better managing that kind of system. But also there's a launchpad. I'd rather prefer calling it an agent marketplace, in which it is maybe around 95% done as well with a tokenomics plan. I've got a small team working on a game show, and it's not related to kind of like the core sort of focus of Eliza. It's just something that I've been fostering, which I do think it is very related to what the DAO's original mission is. It's like we want to have AI agents investing in projects, and as well as especially like ecosystem projects and whatnot, and to add more transparency in the pipeline, because we get hundreds of partnership requests. It's like, I think a lot of DAOs can also learn from this. Building a media ecosystem makes for a healthier DAO. They call the media like the fourth branch of government. And I think that, having a way in which you could boost participation by making a game show, for example, combined with investing, if the DAO's purpose is like trading meme coins, for example. It's like one example, but it can morph into some other stuff, like maybe discussing governance proposals or resolving issues or disputes or getting feedback. You can have like an AI council that you can talk to, and maybe it could be visualized, but that's something that is pretty much ready. I've gotten tons of different pitches from people. We're calling it Clank Tank. It's inspired by Shark Tank, and it's it just runs a simulation. It's not actual like on-chain investing that maybe the follow-up can lead to opportunities, but it's a way a lot of people value discoverability. And so in early days, even before the DAO launched, people would just kind of send tokens to the DAO's address for assets under management, because then their token would show up on this kind of like leaderboard. And it was kind of like a graffiti wall, but it was also like a way to kind of flex how much alignment that you have, like skin in the game with this DAO, which now has like 120,000 holders. And so people really value, that discoverability factor, but it's very difficult if you have like a human kind of like endorsing other coins, because we only have like 2 official tokens, and people get upset if we're like boosting or endorsing a token. Maybe, like there's price pullback and, then we get the heat. But if an AI does that, or if we have a transparent and fair process for like finding ways to lift other projects in the ecosystem up, of which many are tokenized, then it just kind of keeps the vibes chill. So that's another part of the game show that I think people have kind of yet to understand is we're doing it because we want, the mandate was like an AI-led VC, and that's kind of that, plus like entertainment. But also B, it's like partners value a way for just getting more exposure. And this is a way to take out that human liability element from that.
Yeah, what's really interesting was when I first discovered you guys, it was because I was researching virtuals and the whole virtuals ecosystem, and coming out of the Tau or BitTensor universe. One of the things I've been harping on in every show I've ever done about BitTensor, they're extremely poor at marketing what is going on inside of all of their subnets. And when the virtuals universe launched, there was a clear page with a clear front door that showed all the virtuals tokens, and you could go click on them. The many times they had an X account, you could go talk to the project. Right? It was you could interact with it and see what it was right away. And BitTensor had absolutely nothing like that. And so they did a very, 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 very good job of marketing their universe and providing a clear front door to their universe, which is sort of what you're talking about now. And when I found you guys, my understanding initially was that all you were, I didn't know about the Eliza OS GitHub repo and the phenomenon that had erupted there yet. I just saw that it was a AI managed VC, and I was like, well, this is pretty interesting. And then when I went and looked at the numbers were extremely small. It was, I think it was something like 10 million, less than 10 million under management. Yet it had like $1 billion plus valuation. I'm like, well, this doesn't make any sense. And then when I started commenting about that, and people started yelling at me, going, "You're an idiot! You haven't seen what's going on over at GitHub." And then I went and looked, and that's why I found the rest of it. But yeah, no, I commend you on being very focused on marketing, and consumer relations in a way that BitTensor has failed at. And I think they're doing a better job now, but they've historically failed at that particular task.
I think it's extremely important. They're kind of like the next version of social media managers, where you can even train an agent based on any kind of like, if you export your Twitter data, you could, there's a script out there where you could generate a character file based on your tweet style. But yeah, it like then gives them mobility, to market across all platforms. And we're working on it. It's not like one character, it's an ecosystem. It's, we're inspired by the Bazaar. And so like when I'm building out things like this news show or game show, trying to open up opportunities to feature a bunch of different agents, as well as with the content that we're producing, just kind of showing that it's just a big tent, sort of whole bunch of different agents who are all kind of like collaboratively building something. But when it comes to GitHub, it's moving so fast, and that's kind of created a need to create better tools around just even for us, like to keep up. It's the velocity of this project has been unlike anything I've been part of. I think Shaw as well has said something the same. And so there's been some growing pains along the way that we're looking to alleviate, and we open source our solutions for anyone else to use, kind of like as a rising tide to lift all boats. And I've seen other agent devs kind of do similar things in which, for example, there's an agent Solang. It's not using Eliza, but it just kind of speaks to the PVE sort of like collaborative vibes in this sector, in which their agent is helping review PRs, and you can just kind of like point them to any GitHub repo, and they can be immediately useful. But that's only because they've done a great job kind of like creating that agent. I want to recommend, just like as a newbie programmer, to try and do that, because it could turn into spam. But there's so much activity happening across all the different channels. And I want to also highlight the people that are contributing on Discord as well. So I built a tool to help to kind of see who is doing what, answering questions in our coders channel, which is one of our most active channels on Discord. And then we're tipping all those contributors with a Discord bot. We don't even need their wallet, but then they can reuse their tips for, maybe other people who have been helpful. But that's also kind of a way to teach our AI interns like what we're kind of viewing as valuable contributions. And eventually they're going to be helping people with answering frequently asked questions. That's been one of my main gripes, because I'm one of those people that, you can ask me anything and I'll know who or what, kind of like a walking documentation site. And of course I work on docs for a lot of projects. The sad thing is a lot of people don't read the docs, but it's okay. we can bring it to people with agents. And I think that can solve a lot of grievances in open source in general. And I did this whole post. I don't think many people quite understand it, but growing up working on open source software, I've seen a lot of people burn out. And Intel did a survey, like maintainer burnout was number 1, documentation was like number 2, and number 3 and 4 were, I think, something that could be related to it, which was community engagement and something else. But I think if you could at least, like get help summarizing your code base into docs, then you can use an AI agent, train on those docs to, help engage, the latest updates. You can turn your change log into social media posts. You can turn, you don't have to leave people hanging when they have a question. You can at least have a somewhat decent automated response. And that could save developer bandwidth from having to constantly focus break and context switch to answer questions to keep focusing on what they're working on. And you can just do more. It's kind of like a mech suit, or giving people a factory, or just supercharging productivity.
Very interesting. Yeah, I was just sort of thinking about the class of agents and what they're doing right now and what they could be doing. So we just met, so you don't know this, but I'm also a sci-fi author, and I'm published by HarperCollins, and I also self-publish some of my books. And my latest one is a thing called The Name in the Shadow. It's a sci-fi thing, and it's got 4.3 stars on Amazon. It's done very well, but it hasn't sold. My first books, the Max Quick books, these books, millions of readers. But this book, not so much. But if I can find the right person, they tend to love it. So where I'm going with this is, it would be great to have an AI agent that was like a salesman that would hang out on Twitter, and by looking at everyone's tweets, figure out like, oh, this person has a sort of brain that would like this book, and in a non-annoying way, pitch them on the book. And generally, if they're the sort of person that would love it, they'd be like, yeah, great, I'm looking for new things to read. So they're completely open to the pitch. And the agent is rewarded based on number of sales. Like that's its goal, right? So that's its KPI metric. And I feel like there's a lot of sort of vertical, things that need to be sold in that way, that agents could be wickedly good at identifying, closing, and selling a vertical of some particular product to. And I haven't seen anyone really do that yet, but I think that could be like a Shopify enormous use case for agents. Are you aware of anyone doing that?
I think it's still quite early. Like even a lot of big tech firms, Google and OpenAI, etc., they were saying this is going to be the year of AI agents. So I think we'll be seeing more use cases like that. We're still kind of at a ground floor level, but when it comes to like books in general, like I still buy books. And one that does come to mind nowadays is the Diamond Age, because it's like
Stevenson. Yep.
Yeah, we can use AI to like kind of bring characters to life, and for an author, I think you could find a lot of use if you had like this kind of agentic writer's room, where it's like maybe you could kind of like think through your ideas, bounce them through maybe some of your work in progress characters, making sure maybe there's no like
plot holes and things.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Hugely beneficial for sure. So, okay. Well, look, we're just past the hour here, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time, Jin. Is there anything you'd like to plug or mention before we go?
Yeah, I guess really appreciate your time and the audience, and open mind to understanding Eliza and this ecosystem. And I guess I'll plug Clank Tank. It's coming out soon, and look out for V2 tokenomics. Will come right after Launchpad, because product first, white paper later. And that's it. Just going to get back to building.
Jin, hugely thankful for making the time to come on. Once again, my name is Mark Jeffrey. This has been Hash Rate. We'll see you all next time.